Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Thiem. I'm with the National Weather Service office in Atlanta, and this is your weekly weather briefing for Thursday, August 20th, 2020, for North and Central Georgia. So, what are we going to talk about this week? Well, for the rest of the week, we do have a mid-level trough that's setting up. It's going to be pushing ample Gulf moisture into the forecast area as it sets up over the lower Mississippi River Valley. Trough's going to remain in place until next week when it's edged northward, and we start to have a little bit of a steady pattern set up. But we will have some uncertainty regarding the tropics, which we'll touch on in a second. Temperatures are going to be near to slightly below normal through early next week, with higher rain chances and cloud cover helping keep those temperatures a little bit down compared to our climatological norms. Highs are going to be mainly in the 80s to lower 90s through the forecast period. And finally, we'll touch up on a little bit of a tropical update. We do have two tropical depressions out there as I speak here at 12:20 p.m. on Thursday. And those two storms could become tropical storms by the end of the day, one of which could impact our forecast area by next week. All right, so currently we do have a trough setting up over the lower Mississippi River Valley, and we can already see some storms developing along the Gulf Coast. Those storms and that moisture will advect our way throughout the day. As we look a little bit closer to the ground here, we can see those storms there over the Florida Panhandle. And our temperatures as of about 11:30 this morning, we were looking at temperatures in the mid to high 70s for the northern part of the state and the mid 80s for the southern part of the state, with a subtle boundary separating the two. So for today's forecast, we can see some model guidance showing that trough really digging in over the Louisiana area. And that's just going to sit in place for about 3 days and continually just push warm, moist Gulf air into the forecast area. As I mentioned on our surface map there, we can see a cold front that's going to turn into a stationary front and stay put for about 3 days, so to finish off the week, and we could see widespread rain chances as a result, as that moisture pushes up and over that frontal system. So our chances for precip today are going to be around 80% for the northwestern part of the state, going down to about 75 to 66% as we get into central Georgia. And looking at a little bit of an animation of roughly what we're expecting today with model reflectivity, we can see those storms build up a little bit in the middle of the afternoon, and they really surge, they cluster together as they move up into North Georgia. We could see these storms persisting late into the evening and into the overnight. As you can see, these clusters, when they form together, that's going to give us some higher chances for isolated precipitation in certain areas. And given the saturation out there, we're going to have to keep an eye out for any places getting inundated too quickly throughout the rest of the afternoon and evening. As we look at today's SBC convective outlook, we do have a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms. This risk is only for severe winds. We're not expecting widespread severe hail, though it could be possible to see at least a smaller hail out there throughout the day. And we also have a slight risk for some isolated flash flooding events, given the synoptic setup we have with that warm, moist air overriding that frontal boundary there in North Georgia. And as we can see, our precip that we're expecting for day one, aerially, so that means on average, we're expecting places to receive somewhere between about a half inch to an inch of rain throughout the next 18 hours through tomorrow morning. However, looking at some individual model output, we are seeing that we could have some training storms and some storm clusters that could put down up to 2 to 3 inches in some isolated locations. And given some of the precip we've had recently, this does draw some concerns that we could see some isolated flash flooding throughout the evening. As for Friday and Saturday, we'll start with Friday. We still have a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms area-wide once again for tomorrow. Our rain chances increase to around 90% in some areas, but would still remain relatively high, at least 75% area-wide. You see there on the right, our surface map, we have these isolated low pressures organizing themselves in waves along that frontal boundary. That's just going to help continually drive storm development each day. And we see that widespread rain there as well. And as we get into Saturday, Our convective outlook is down to general thunderstorms on this day, and our rain chances do start to decrease a little bit as we start to get into this transition period where the trough weakens and moves northward. So we're seeing our rain chances decrease slightly into around the 60 to 70% range throughout the forecast area. We can see there on the right, at the start of the day, that frontal boundary is still going to be in place, but it's starting to wear down. And we're going to see high pressure replace that, especially once we move into Sunday. We can see the boundary is expected to be gone, high pressure beginning to build in with each day. Monday is probably going to be its strength, and then, but it's going to keep spanning out westward as we transition throughout the week Tuesday. And if you see there off the western coast of Florida, that's when we start to see one of these tropical waves possibly starting to make an impact there in the Gulf area. As we transition Wednesday and Thursday, we could see landfall of that tropical disturbance as we get into the forecast area. And as of now, it is expected to be somewhere within the Gulf states by the time we get into Thursday, but there is still uncertainty, and I'll touch on that in a second. But before I do, here's a 7-day forecast for Atlanta for our high and low temperatures. And as I promised you, we are looking a little bit below normal on these days due to the increased moisture, the increased storm chances, and cloud cover that we will see. Now, this is for Atlanta, but it is a good proxy for the rest of the forecast area. Changes are minimal. However, if you are well north of Atlanta, let's say in the Dalton or Rome area, you could probably decrease these values by about 3 to 5 degrees. If you're down further south, let's say in Macon, Columbus, or Vidalia, you might decrease these values, increase these values a little bit by about up to 5 degrees, and you get a relative distance. But in general, we are still expecting slightly below normal temperatures for this time of year. As for our 7-day forecast rainfall, now this is in flux, but as of this morning, we are expecting in general about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall throughout the area with some isolated higher locations possible. All right, so getting into the meat of what we want to talk about today, outside some of our normal conditions, we are seeing an increase in our tropical outlook. Looking at our climatologically active period is what we're starting to get into here on August 20th. You see that red line, that's where we currently stand. So it's when we start to see a real increase in tropical activity, and indeed we do. Looking at some infrared imagery here, we see we have 3 tropical waves that are forming coming off of Africa into that equatorial zone. As they start to get out of there, we have had 2 of them already form into tropical depressions. The first one, Tropical Depression 13, formed last night. It's the one in the middle there. You might think the order is a little bit weird because the one that's closer to us is the higher number, but that tropical depression, number 14 there, was just labeled as a depression as of the 11 a.m. National Hurricane Center update. So that one got the tropical depression status second after 13. We'll talk about that one first. And we also see after these 2 waves, we have a third there right off the African coast. We are expecting a 40% chance of tropical cyclone development in the next 5 days. So let's touch on Tropical Depression 14 first. It's the one that's closest to us. Now, this storm is going to face a lot of adversity as it moves west and then gradually northwestward. As it moves into just south of the Yucatan there, right now it's currently fighting quite a bit of dry air. As it moves into that little Yucatan Gulf, it does start to override that dry air. It starts to get a little bit of moist air into it, and it could strengthen a little bit higher. But as it starts to move northwestward, we talked about that trough that's going to be sitting over the Mississippi River Valley there, and there's going to be quite a bit of shear that's associated with that trough. And so as it's moving up there Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, even though that trough is going to lift northward, it is still going to be fighting a little bit of shear that's left over from that trough. And so we aren't expecting rapid development of that system. It could be a tropical storm by the time we get into tonight, but as we go throughout the week, we're not expecting rapid development of this system just yet. And there is quite a bit of uncertainty still left there, with some ensembles showing the projected path could be anywhere from going into towards Mexico City all the way over here to Tallahassee. There is a pretty wide range there. So we'll see how this develops as the days go on. But right now, it is prone to head more towards the Texas and Louisiana coastline. Um, that's where we're starting to see some clusters of some hurricane models start to prog this storm as going towards, but there is still quite a bit of uncertainty. But the main thing with that is that it's going to be help push quite a bit of Gulf moisture up into that area, which is going to prime the area for our next Tropical Depression 13, which now has just been updated as of 11 a.m. and expected to become a hurricane status possibly by the time it gets to the western Bahamas and possibly into the Gulf of Mexico. As we see there, we're expecting tropical storm status here by the end of today. There have been a couple areas that are seeing tropical storm watches now. We are expecting Puerto Rico to become in that as well here over the next several hours. If you look over here to the right, I want to show you there's still some uncertainty with the exact path of this storm. However, certainty is increasing quite a bit to see this system basically go on the northern side of Hispaniola in Cuba towards the southern Florida panhandle. But as we start to interact with the leftover trough that we were seeing over the lower Mississippi River Valley, even though it's going to be lifting northward, we do start to have stronger zonal flow over the southern Gulf states. And depending on where this system interacts with that zonal flow, could decide where it ends up ultimately kicking out. There is still a chance, as we see here with some of our outlier ensembles, that it could curve up to the northeast before it really gets towards our area. There's also a chance it could also be kicked out south of that zonal flow there and move out further west. But around 50% of these ensembles, and these percentages are currently increasing, are putting this system into the Gulf states and putting us, at least part of our area, on what we call the dirty side of the storm. What I mean by that is usually the right side of these tropical tracks tend to have a little bit higher impacts with them. Now, we're not expecting at this point a major hurricane, obviously, as deemed by the forecast on the left, but looking at some of the environmental conditions this storm is going to be getting into, a lot of the things that usually help dampen these storms may not be there right now. So as far as our wind shear, it's going to be relatively low because of that Bermuda high that we talked about earlier. Moving into the Gulf states, it's not going to be basically causing a whole lot of large scale wind shear to this storm, which is going to help keep its intensity up. There's going to be ample moisture in the area, partially thanks to Tropical Depression 14. As you can see, there's a little bit of wave there on the left of that middle image. That's where Tropical Depression 14 is currently expected to be in the GFS model that's shown here, and it helps bring some moisture into the area, which is going to help fuel Tropical Depression 13 here. We're also seeing above normal sea surface temperatures. Now, they could be warmer as we get into earlier September, but they are currently above normal at this time. So conditions are ripe there to possibly see this storm strengthen into a hurricane. As much past that, the guidance is very uncertain as to what kind of strength this could be. So we're going to have to take it one day at a time and see how this storm develops as we go forward. But these are, as of Tuesday morning, they have it off the western side of the Florida Peninsula with possible landfall along the Gulf peninsulas of the Gulf state somewhere around Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. For those that are subscribed to our special briefings list, we will be potentially sending out some briefings here over the next coming days regarding this storm. So a quick summary of what we talked about for the rest of the week. With that mid-level trough pushing ample Gulf moisture into the forecast area, we're expecting widespread showers and storms each day. We do have a marginal risk of some severe thunderstorms today and tomorrow, that being Thursday and Friday, depending on when you're listening to this. And our main threat there is going to be gusty winds, but today we do also have a slight risk of seeing excessive rainfall there in North Georgia. So isolated flash flooding could be possible. We'll keep an eye on that as we get into the evening and overnight period. Next week, that trough that we talked about is going to be pushed north with a more steady zonal pattern setting up. Typically, this means normal summertime conditions with scattered to numerous showers and storms possible each day. But we do have uncertainty regarding the tropics, which have a little bit more recently developed into our long-term forecast. Our temperatures are going to be near to slightly below normal through early next week with higher rain chances and cloud cover, helping reduce those high temperatures and heat indices. Highs are expected to be mainly in the 80s to lower 90s each day. As for our tropical update, again, we have 2 tropical depressions out of 3 tropical waves that are in the Atlantic currently. 2 of those depressions could become tropical storms by the end of the day, with one, that tropical depression 13, which is now Prague to head on the north side of Hispaniola and Cuba, that could wedge its way into the Western Gulf by Tuesday and Wednesday, possibly getting into the states along the Gulf shoreline there on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll keep an eye on that as we go throughout the weekend and early part of next week and update you guys accordingly. So just a quick reminder too, there will be no live 1 p.m. briefing this afternoon. This is now several weeks that we've recorded these ahead of time. They seem to be working out pretty well, so we're going to stick with that going forward. As far as we also wanted to emphasize this one page, if you'd like your own customized forecast page, you can go to weather.gov/forecast points for your own customized forecast page. You can bookmark and refer to whenever you're looking at the forecast throughout the week. Please feel free to contact us with any questions that you might have via NWS chat, email, or by phone. And we want to thank you guys all for all that you do. If you need that contact information, it is here. Thank you very much for sticking with us through this weekly weather briefing. Once again, my name has been Kyle Thiem. Have a great week.